Are you satisfied with your English level? Today we'll hear from an English learner from Senegal who isn't. And we ask the question, when should you be satisfied? We also have more of your comments and questions this week. Welcome to
Aprender Inglés with Reza and Craig.
Hello and welcome, especially if you're a new listener. My name's Craig.
And my name's Reza.
And with nearly 50 years of teaching English between us, Reza and I will help you improve your English and take it to the next level. How are you, mate?
I'm fine, Craig. I'm pretty happy. We've already recorded one podcast. We normally record 2 or 3 when we meet. And I was very satisfied with that recording. What about you?
Yeah, me too. Our regular listeners will know that we batch record our podcasts. We record 3 at a time and then release them over the next 3 weeks. So we apologize if we don't immediately reply to your feedback. But if you keep listening, I promise you will hear your message and your feedback. And our first one this week is from a good friend of the show, Sonia, who is currently living in Berlin.
Hello Reza, hello Craig, how are you? All is good here in Berlin. I'm Sonia. Thanks a lot for the episode about Spain. It was really nice, a quick and interesting trip around Spain. I enjoyed it a lot, thank you. And in that message I want to ask to you if it's any different thing in the recipe, or I don't know, between the cake that the Americans, for example, the apple pie or the pumpkin pie, it's the same in America that in Britain, or it's a different kind of products. I don't know if you call cake pie like random or it's about something specific on the ingredients that you use. That's it for now. Yeah, have a nice weekend. Talk soon. Tschüss.
Thank you, Sonia. It's always a pleasure hearing from you over there in Berlin. And for any listener who hasn't heard the episode that Sonia referred to, episode 360, we spoke about different areas and regions of Spain. So to listen to that, go to inglespodcast.com/360.
Yes, guten Morgen, Sonia. Thanks very much for your message. We hope you're enjoying yourself in Berlin. It was a very good message, a very clear message. Having said that, there's always room for improvement. And I did notice 1 or 2 little things that we could improve. You said, I want to ask to you. And many people make that mistake. But there shouldn't be the word to. You should say, I want to ask you. So take away the preposition to. There's no preposition in English. Another thing you said was, typical mistake, I think you're translating again, the same that you wanted to know if British was the same. You said that American, but it's the same as. So think of the collocation, the words, the same as.
And your question was an interesting one, comparing the difference, I think, between pies and cakes. Is that the problem? You do hear Americans speaking a lot about pies, P-I-E, and you mentioned, Sonia, apple pie and pumpkin pie. Pumpkin, if you speak Spanish, is calabaza. Very popular sweet pies in the US, but pies can also be not sweet, and we say savory in English. A savory pie may have meat inside or something that isn't sweet. In Spanish, you'd say salado. So you can have a sweet pie and a savory pie. And the definition of a pie, according to my dictionary, is a filling inside the pie and a pastry shell or topping. So you can have an open pie with no pastry topping, or a closed pie with pastry or masa on top. But what's a cake, Reza?
For me, a cake is basically made of some type of dough or a batter. Now, dough, think of the word donut. Dough plus nut, donut. Dough is la masa in Spanish, the mixture. And batter is something similar, but the mixture has been beaten. Yeah? Think of the Spanish word batir, right? So batter has been beaten, batir. So it's like beaten dough, if you like. So cake is sweet and it's bread-like. It's similar to bread and it's made from dough or batter. For me, that's cake as opposed to pie.
And when you beat the mixture to make a cake, you put air inside. And maybe that's the difference, because you might say the Spanish word masa for pastry and for dough or batter. But maybe the difference is with cake, there's more air inside and pastry is denser. It's thicker and crustier.
And of course, traditionally, most cakes will have eggs. Although these days, of course, there are many alternatives. There are vegan cakes, there are gluten-free cakes, but traditionally you think of eggs being in cakes, whereas there don't have to be eggs in pies.
And just to confuse you even further, Sonia, there is another word that's interesting, and that's a tart. T-A-R-T. What's a tart? Well, a tart is a small pie with no top, so no pastry on top, and it's often filled with fruit or custard, natillas in Spanish, or jam, which is mermelada. So not ham, but jam. Remember, it's sweet. So with those definitions in mind, Reza, here's a question for you. What's a cheesecake? Is a cheesecake a tart, a pie, or a cake?
Ooh, that's a good question.
I was thinking about that, and I'm not sure.
I think strictly speaking, it isn't. It is not a cake.
No, I don't think so.
Although they call it cheesecake, it isn't really a type of cake.
It's more like a pie, isn't it?
Or maybe a tart. Because it's not covered. There's no pastry on top. It's kind of a world of its own, isn't it, really?
Yeah, so I think we'll throw that out there to you, the audience. If you are a pastry chef or you know the answer to this, is a cheesecake a cake, a tart, or a pie? Next, we have a voice message from Alberto from Italy.
Hello, Greg. I'm Alberto from Milano, Italy. I'm recording this message because I want to tell you that I was very, very surprised to hear the episode of you and Luke Thompson speaking together, because I have to say that I am used to listen to two podcasts in particular. And one is Luke's English podcast, and the other one is your podcast with Reza. And so I'm a huge fan of you all. And as I said, I was very surprised. It was very interesting. It was quite strange to listen to you together in the same podcast in this interview. It was very interesting. It was very funny. And so I just want to tell you and to Luke, thank you very much, because you both are really giving me a boost to listen, to study, to speak, to read in English, and to improve my English comprehension, speaking, and so on. So thank you very much again, and bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Alberto, for your message. And Alberto was speaking about a special bonus episode that was on the 16th of April, myself speaking with Luke from Luke's English podcast. And that was the episode after bread, which was episode 359. So it doesn't have an episode number because it isn't an Aprender Inglés con Reza y Craig podcast, but it was released on April the 16th if you want to listen. So thanks, Alberto. It was really nice to get your feedback.
Yes, thanks very much, Alberto, for listening to our podcast and to Luke's podcast. Very good podcast also. In fact, You said I'm used to listen to 2 podcasts, and we understand you. But your grammar there isn't quite right. We could improve that, because I am used to, that expression means I'm accustomed to. The word to is a preposition. It's not the infinitive to, it's preposition to. So verbs after prepositions must be ing. So you should say, I'm used to listening to 2 podcasts. So I'm used to plus ing verb. I'm used to listening to 2 podcasts.
And if you're confused with the differences between be used to, get used to, and the 2 uses that Reza described, we did do an episode about this way back in 2014, I think it was. Go to inglespodcast.com/6 to listen to that. And also episode 152, we spoke about the differences between used to and would in the past. Next we have a voice message from Jesus from Getafe.
Hello Reza, hello Craig. This is Jesus again from Getafe, Madrid. It's a pleasure speaking to you another time. I'm always waiting to listen to your new weekly podcasts. I enjoy very much with the topics you talk about. I think I have improved my level since I have been listening to you. I have written this message again so that I can read it and not make too many mistakes, because my level is low and I can't speak fluently. When I heard your last podcast about the autonomous regions in Spain and talking about Aragon, you say that Teruel is famous for good skiing. Well, I like skiing very much, and I have to say that although there are 2 ski stations in Teruel, which are Javalambre and Valdelinares, the most famous and well-known ski stations in Aragon are in Huesca, in the Pyrenees, which are Formigal, Panticosa, Candanchú, Astún, and Ferler. Apart of this, I liked a lot the virtual travel around Spain. You are the best. A big hug for you both. Keep safe, guys. Bye-bye.
Thanks very much for your message, Jesus. It was very clear. Your pronunciation was really, really good, and I understood absolutely everything that you said. So, good message. I really enjoyed it. Speaking about the word enjoy, there is one little mistake here we could correct. You say, I enjoy very much with the topics. That's a typical Spanish mistake, because you're thinking of disfrutar con. Yeah, I always forget to say con in Spanish. I say, he disfrutado eso. And it's con, isn't it, in Spanish? But in English, that's because there is no preposition. We say, I enjoy the topics very much. No with, and also, you enjoy something very much. Put very much at the end, not in the middle. I enjoy the topics very much.
And speaking of prepositions, you also said, Jesus, a part of this. The correct expression is apart from this. So apart from this, I also like blah, blah, blah. And I think it's really good that you're focusing in on accuracy and thinking about the grammar and vocabulary, writing down your message and then reading it. That's wonderful. But please also do the opposite. Just write some bullet points to help you remember what you want to say and practice your fluency. And it doesn't matter how many mistakes you make. So you have to do both. There has to be a balance between accuracy and fluency. So sometimes focusing on the accuracy, especially when you're writing, but also just try to speak without thinking too much about your mistakes and try and work on your fluency more and your spontaneity, how spontaneous you are when you're speaking. Well, thanks very much for your message, Jesus, and for the information about the skiing resorts in Teruel.
Thanks, Jesus. Very good travel tips.
Next, we have a voice message from Senegal in Africa from our friend Ahmed.
Hello there, Craig and Reza. My name is Ahmed and I live in Senegal, West Africa. I found your podcast about 2 weeks ago when I was listening to Luke's English podcast. And I think Craig was a guest of the episode which I was listening to. And that's when I found out that you guys have this wonderful podcast. Since I began listening to it, I got hooked and I'm having a whale of a time. I cannot get enough of it. And I just wanted to appreciate your wonderful job and to tell you that you are doing quite incredibly well. And I would like you to talk about being satisfied in the level that you are in as a learner, because I'm struggling with this particular thing. You know, people sometimes praise my level, my level, but I cannot say that. I couldn't say that. I mean, and I know that this is my problem. I should have been satisfied with what I already have, but you know, for some reason, I'm not.
Well, thank you for your wonderful message, Ahmed. It really made me happy to know that we've got some listeners in Africa, in Senegal. It's absolutely amazing to me that we're reaching you over there.
Thanks very much, Ahmed. I'd like to say that I'm also really impressed that we've got a listener in Senegal. I hope we get more. And thanks very much for complimenting us, for saying nice things. And it's lovely to know that you're having a whale of a time. I really liked the way you used that expression.
That's a lovely expression. We had a whale of a time. Yeah, I'm having a whale of a time. And we have a whale of a time recording this podcast.
Another thing you said, Ahmed, was, I couldn't get enough of it. I like that expression as well. If you can't get enough of something, it means you love it. You want more. So, well, you've just found us. As you can see, we have 365 episodes, so you can get more. Just dip in there, go ahead, and listen to as many episodes as you like.
Another expression I liked that Ahmed used was hooked, which is enganchado. He said that he's hooked, and there's a phrasal verb to be hooked on something. Hooked on a hobby or hooked on a certain type of food, for example. And if you're hooked on the podcast, Ahmed, we say you're an AIRC-aholic. Now, you've only been listening for 2 weeks, but an AIRC-aholic is AIRC-aholic. So aprender inglés with Reza and Craig. Those 4 initials make up AIRC-aholic. So AIRC-aholics are hooked on the podcast. So to be hooked on something means addicted.
You said that you're struggling with not being satisfied with your level. You said, I'm struggling with this. That's a good expression, to struggle with something, to find it hard to accept or understand. Though I would say that your spoken level of English, which is what I've now seen, I couldn't comment on your writing because I've never seen it, but your spoken level of English is very good. You certainly have an advanced level.
Yeah, I definitely say at least C1 for spoken English. So you have got a very, very high level of English. And your question's very interesting. When should a learner be satisfied with their language level? What do you think, Reza? I mean, are you generally satisfied with your level of Spanish?
No, I'm not. I'm not at all. There's lots of questions we could ask about learning. Craig, what questions could listeners ask themselves to measure their progress, to measure how well they're doing? What could a learner ask him or herself?
Well, the first question perhaps could be, why are you learning English in the first place? Because there are many different reasons why people learn a language. Do you need an English qualification, for example, to pass an exam? Or maybe you're learning English as a hobby, in which case perhaps it's not so important to get to a really, really high level. Maybe you need a promotion at work, or you're just using English to travel as a language of communication. So it really depends on why you're learning English in the first place, and then you can set your goals for the kind of level or ability that you need to reach.
Indeed, yes. So you should ask yourself if your level meets your needs. If you require a certain level and you already have it, well, That's something to be very happy about. Yes, you can always improve your level. You can always improve your level if you're not a native speaker. But if you've already reached the level you need, it could be for work, for travel, for pleasure, for socializing. Well done. Give yourself a pat on the back. A pat when you use your hand to touch your back. Give yourself a pat on the back. In other words, congratulate yourself. Try to improve, but don't look at it as the glass half empty, but as the glass half full. Think of what you have learned, because presumably there was a time in your life when you didn't know any English, and now you know rather a lot. So think of it like that. Be positive.
Also, some people tend to be perfectionists. Now, that's not me. I'm not a perfectionist. Far from it. But some people are not happy until they can speak without making any mistakes, when they're completely fluent, when their pronunciation is absolutely perfect. Well, I'm here to tell you that even native speakers make mistakes, and very few people in the world are truly bilingual, that they speak two languages at the same really high level. So maybe you need to moderate your expectations a little and just try to get constant improvement rather than perfection.
Craig, is there a time when you should stop learning? When you've reached the level that you require, when you've met your needs, should people stop learning? What do you think?
No, I think it's a process, and I think it could be actually dangerous if you stop learning, because then you stagnate like a pool or a lake of dirty water that's not going anywhere, it's not flowing anywhere, and you get that horrible green stuff on the top of the water. That's stagnation. You don't want your knowledge to stagnate. You always want to be moving forward. And especially if you're maybe a little older, like myself, you're in advancing years, maybe in the third age, it's really good to keep learning, to keep your mind active, and languages are a wonderful way to do that. So don't ever stop learning, just keep advancing.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, because as well as being good for your mind in general, it will keep your level of English up, because if you're not a native speaker of any language, you will start to forget things if you don't practice. You won't forget everything, but you will forget some things. Craig asked me earlier if I was happy with my Spanish level. Well, it's okay, but I'd like it to be higher, which is why I'm studying right now for a Spanish language exam. I'm going to do it in a few weeks.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Where are you studying?
At home, at home and online, because I actually did study Spanish a few years ago at the official language school here in Spain, the Escuela Oficial de Idiomas, and I got the top qualification that they had at the time. But since then, their system has changed, and now there's a higher qualification you can get. So it's given me something to work towards. So I'm going to try the official language school C2 exam in a few weeks.
So you're registered for it?
Yes, I'm registered. I've got the date, and I want to have the certificate. It's something to work for. It's something which could be very useful in my life in the future if I live in Spain and I have a certificate saying that I have a proficient level, C2 in Spanish. That could be very useful.
So is that your main motivation to get that certificate, or did you just feel that you needed to refresh and, we can say, brush up your Spanish?
A bit of both, a mixture. Yeah, I do want the certificate, and I might not study if I weren't going for the certificate. I have to admit that. So it's a good motivation, but I'm enjoying remembering things which I'd forgotten because I haven't used them, or realizing that I've been doing things incorrectly for years. Not big mistakes, but little mistakes, but they're mistakes. And it's about time that I stop making them. You know, it's never too late to learn. For example, the subjunctive, indicative, subjunctive, you know, quiero que vayas, instead of quiero que vas.
Tough.
Typical Giri or gringo mistake, isn't it? And even after years knowing about this, I still get it wrong. So by studying the different conditions about when you should have a subjunctive or not, I'm beginning to make fewer mistakes. Also, because in Spanish, all nouns must be either masculine or feminine, unlike in English, where only people are masculine or feminine. If it ends in O, masculine. If it ends in A, feminine. Although there are a few exceptions, fine. But what about all the words that don't? You see, we guiris or gringos, we forget them. You Spanish speakers who are using them all the time, of course you know, you've been brought up as a baby hearing it all the time. It's la sartén, right? But for about 20 years I've been saying el sartén. But I've just recently discovered it's la sartén. Yeah, because it doesn't end in O or A, it ends in EN. We don't know. And we just hope we're getting it right, but I was getting it wrong.
Yeah.
So I've corrected myself after 20 years. The frying pan is la sartén.
It's a minefield. It's really tough. Things like la mano, I always forget, and I say el mano, and it's quite difficult. And I take my hat off to you. I salute you. If you take your hat off to someone, you give respect. You give them kudos. You say, that's fantastic that you're doing that. Because I 100% agree with you. My Spanish is getting worse. I forget things. I need to revise the grammar. But you're actually taking action, which is something that I need to do as well. So please let us know in 2 weeks what happens with the exam, and good luck.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Do you have any tips, though, to help Ahmed with his continued search of perfection in English?
Yes, well, as regards speaking, first of all, Ahmed's speaking is very good from what I can hear.
Yeah.
But advice for him or anybody in general is, now that we live in the modern age and it's very easy to use technology, it's cheap, it's available, use it to your advantage. So why not record your speaking on audio every few weeks? Not every day, that's not necessary. That would be counterproductive. Not every single day. You don't want to get obsessive about it, because you might have some days where you seem to be not as good as the day before. Yeah, that can happen. So don't be obsessive about it. But maybe every few weeks, every week, every few weeks, record your speaking on audio. It could be on a mobile phone, on a computer, or whatever. And ask yourself if you're getting better. Compare your most recent recording with earlier ones. As I say, not from a day or two ago, but they have to be from some weeks or months or years ago to be able to judge the progress. Ask yourself, are you more fluent? Or fluency, less hesitation? Can you keep going without getting lost? Has your pronunciation improved? Has your range of vocabulary and grammar structures increased? For example, for me, that would mean in Spanish, am I beginning to use the subjunctive more? And accuracy, am I beginning to use the subjunctive correctly? Not just using it, but getting it right. So all those things are things that you can ask yourself by comparing the different audio recordings that you do every few weeks.
And I agree with Reza that sometimes it can be a bit of a pain in the neck to do it every day, although some people do enjoy keeping audio diaries. So if you find it difficult to write in English, and I find it difficult to write in Spanish, I would be much happier recording my voice as a journal, as a diary every day, and just saying what I've done to study, for example, or how you're feeling, if you're feeling frustrated, if you're feeling encouraged and motivated. So you could do a few minutes every day if you want to do an audio journal. Or as Reza said, every week or 2 or 3, record your voice so you've got that comparison. You can compare your voice over time. You could also keep writing and compare your improved writing over time. Any emails you've written in English, letters, maybe exercises you've done from a textbook if you're taking a course, homework, tasks, and any old exams that you've done, keep those and go back. Not only is it good to show your progress, but it's also encouraging to realize that a year ago you've improved so much. So keep those old materials to look back on.
Yes, and writing is similar to speaking, but of course it's not exactly the same, because there are things to look out for, such as spelling. Whenever you speak, you don't spell. It's not written. But to check your progress in writing, there could be a word, for example, let's say apple. which at first you kept writing APEL. Then you got a little bit better and you wrote APPEL, but you're still wrong. And maybe eventually you got it into your head that it's APPLE. So it might have taken you half a year to finally stop making that mistake. But check your spelling. Is it getting better? As well as your grammar, your vocabulary. Punctuation is another thing specific to writing. It's not always the end of the world if you get it wrong, but it looks good to use precise, careful punctuation because it shows that your mind is thinking of the language in the correct way. Ask yourself, do I need a new sentence, or is this still one sentence? Is it a comma? Is this someone speaking? I need to write speech marks, things like that. But also in writing, but I guess it applies to speaking as well, you need to think of the style. Yeah, and things like the register. How formal should my writing be? If it's an email to a lawyer that you've written, should be formal. Did you know at that time the formal expressions 6 months ago that you know now? Compare your more up-to-date writing with your older writing, not only for the basics, but the more subtle things like the register, things like linking expressions, connectors. Are you using them more? Things like although, however, on the one hand, on the other hand. Next, my final point, lastly, those little extra things which add quality to a language, which aren't perhaps essential to get your meaning across, but they make it so much more coherent, more cohesive as well. You're joining things together more. It's becoming easier for you to develop your ideas in a more sophisticated way. Dividing into paragraphs, sections, showing that you know how to plan your ideas. The more you're able to control the basics, such as grammar, vocabulary, spelling, the more time you can give to these other things like dividing into paragraphs and connectors and style. So you'll notice that these things improve, hopefully, every few weeks or every few months.
So yeah, keep those old pieces of writing that you've done so you can compare and notice your progress. Also, if you're recording audios on your mobile phone, keep those as well for a record of your improvement. And of course, not only can you record your voice on mobile phones, you can also use applications such as Duolingo, Memrise, Busuu, Anki. We've spoken about these apps before, but they have different levels. They gamify your progress as you're improving your grammar and vocabulary. So you can also keep a check on how you're improving with these apps by the level that you're reaching in the app.
Okay, now it's your turn to practice your English. It's the only way you're going to really get better, practicing. So why not send us a voice message? All you need to do is go to SpeakPipe, that's SpeakPipe, speakpipe.com/English podcast, and record your audio as Ahmed did and leave it there. And we'll listen to it, and as soon as we can, we'll get back to you with our feedback.
Or if you prefer to send us an email, you can reach me, Craig, Craig, at inglespodcast.com, or Reza. His address is belfastreza, Reza, at gmail.com.
Another place where you can help improve your level is by looking at the online store. Go to store, S-T-O-R-E, store.mansioningles.net, and there you will find a range of useful material such as ebooks and short courses to help improve and notice your progress and your level in all sorts of aspects regarding your English.
And on the Mansion Inglés website, we do have a level test that will give you your level and which free course you can take depending on the level that you reach. And you can find that at the main website, mansioningles.com. Before we go, thank you to all of you who are helping us by supporting this podcast on Patreon. You can join our Patreon program for as little as $1.20 per month, and that's including the VAT tax. You get instant access to recent transcriptions so that you can read everything that we say on these podcasts. For more information, go to Patreon, patreon.com/Ingles podcast.
We'd like to name every single one of our Patreon supporters because we really appreciate you all, but we haven't got time for that. But what we like to do is mention our most recent sponsors, the ones who've joined us this month and are helping us. They are Jefferson Zambrano, Juan Antonio Solera Villena, Cesar Lorenzo, Ginés Rodríguez, and Andreas and Jessica. Thank you very much to you guys who've just joined the Patreon scheme.
And in next week's podcast, we're answering your questions and comments, and specifically prepositions and phrasal verbs that you might be having problems with when you speak about technology in this digital world. So please join us for that next week. Until then, thank you for listening this week. It's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
The music in this podcast is by Pitts. The track is called See You Later.